You're standing at the mirror, and there it is, a thick gray hair sprouting from your chin, or your ears, which somehow grew fur overnight, or your eyebrows, suddenly wild and untrimmable, while your nose hair now needs monthly maintenance. Meanwhile, the hair on your head keeps thinning. So what's actually happening here? Why does hair disappear from your scalp but multiply on your ears, nose, and chin, like your body flipped some switch? Here's the strange truth. The exact same hormone shrinking your scalp hair is the one thickening hair everywhere else. Your body does not run hair on one master dial. Every follicle is wired with its own private hormone sensitivity switch, tuned specifically to where it lives. A follicle on your scalp and a follicle on your ear can sit inches apart in blood supply, but respond to hormones like they belong to two different bodies. As you age, your hormone ratios quietly shift. That shift is the trigger. And the very first consequence shows up exactly where you least expect it, in hair that was barely visible before. Let's talk about that nose hair for a second, because it reveals something important about timing. Every hair on your body starts as what's called vellus hair. Think of it as the factory default setting: fine, soft, pale, almost invisible, practically see-through if you look closely at the back of a child's hand. That hair is not weak or unfinished. It is simply waiting. Every vellus follicle has a threshold built into it, a certain level of hormone exposure it needs before it will switch into producing thicker, pigmented terminal hair instead. For most of your life, the hormone signal reaching your nose or ear follicles stays under that threshold. Nothing changes. Then, sometime around your 40s, the exposure quietly crosses the line at that specific location. The follicle doesn't malfunction, it upgrades. That is why nose hair can feel like it appeared overnight. It didn't appear from nothing. It was simply waiting for its threshold, and one day the chemistry finally cleared the bar. Now compare that to what is happening on your scalp at the exact same time, because the speed is completely different. Scalp thinning does not work like a threshold being crossed. It works like erosion. Each growth cycle, the same androgen signal nudges scalp follicles to produce a slightly finer, slightly shorter hair than the cycle before. This is called miniaturization, and it is slow by design. You don't lose visible density in a week or a month. It happens across dozens of growth cycles, spread over years, so gradually that you usually only notice it in hindsight, comparing an old photo to the mirror. This mismatch in speed is exactly why the two changes feel unrelated. One process announces itself loudly in a single morning. The other has been working silently in the background the entire time. Same hormonal shift, two completely different clocks. So why would the body build it this way, with opposite reactions running on opposite timelines? Because location is doing more work here than most people realize. Every follicle on your body is like its own tiny outpost, and each outpost was built with a different sensitivity dial, already installed before you were even born. Scalp follicles were built with a dial that reacts to strong androgen signaling by shrinking. Ear, nose, brow, and chin follicles were built with a dial that reacts to that same signaling by expanding. Nothing about your body is confused or malfunctioning when both things happen at once. The hormone is simply reading two different instruction sets that happen to live an inch apart on your skull. And this is rarely a one-spot story. Once hormone ratios shift enough to flip one follicle switch, they are usually shifting enough to flip several at once, because the hormone is circulating through your entire bloodstream, not delivering a private memo to a single hair. This is why bushier eyebrows and new shoulder or back hair often show up around the same stretch of years. It is not that your eyebrows decided to rebel on their own. It is that eyebrow follicles and back follicles both happen to sit above a similar sensitivity threshold, so when the hormonal tide rises, multiple zones cross their line together. Here is where the pattern splits by sex, while the underlying rule stays identical. In men, testosterone typically stays elevated relative to estrogen through midlife, and that ratio is what pushes ear, nose, and back follicles past their threshold, which is why thicker ear or back hair is such a common report after 40. In women, the pattern flips around a different hormonal event. As estrogen drops sharply around menopause, the smaller amount of androgen that was always present becomes relatively more dominant by comparison. That relative shift, not necessarily a rise in androgen itself, is often enough to push chin or upper lip follicles past their threshold for the first time. Same mechanism, same rule, but the visible result looks different depending on which hormone moved and in which direction. Before midlife, the hormone signal reaching ear, nose, or chin follicles almost never gets strong enough to cross their conversion threshold. Those follicles sit there quietly for decades, doing very little. But once the same signal strengthens with age, it is often strong enough to do two things simultaneously. It pushes those dormant vellus follicles over their threshold, upgrading them into terminal hair. And at the very same time, it pushes scalp follicles over their own opposite threshold, deep enough into miniaturization to become visibly thinner. It is not a coincidence that these two changes seem to arrive together. They are two readouts from a single underlying shift. One important distinction is worth sitting with before we go further. A single new hair on your chin is just one data point. It tells you almost nothing on its own. What actually reflects the hormonal shift is a repeating pattern, the same zones producing new terminal hairs again and again over months, not a one-time surprise you pluck and forget. That distinction between a random blip and an ongoing signal is exactly what determines whether there is anything worth tracking at all. Here's the part that should actually bring you some relief. This hormone shift does not spiral forever. There is no true off switch. Your androgen and estrogen ratio will not go back to what it was at 25, but it does something almost as useful. It plateaus. Once your body settles into a life phase, whether that's post-40 for men or post-menopause for women, the ratio tends to level off rather than keep climbing. That means the follicles that we're going to convert into terminal hair have largely already made their move. You are not watching an escalating problem. You are watching a system find its new resting point and then hold there. That plateau is exactly what makes a seasonal check useful instead of stressful. Once a season, give yourself 90 seconds in front of the mirror. Ears, nose, chin, brows, back, if you can see it or feel it. You are not hunting for problems. You are reading a map. Notice what is there. If a new terminal hair shows up in one of those zones, mentally file it as a hormonal data point, not a red flag. Your body is simply reporting in. The only time this warrants a call to a doctor is if a change is sudden, rapid, or extreme, hair appearing somewhere it never has in a matter of days, or in a pattern that feels wildly out of proportion. Outside of that, this is you reading your own biology on a schedule, instead of being ambushed by it in random moments under bad bathroom lighting. And here's what tends to happen once you actually start doing this check a few times. You stop finding new surprises everywhere. You start finding the same 2 or 3 zones again and again. Maybe it's always the chin and never the brows. Maybe it's always the ears and the back, and the chin stays quiet. That repetition is not boring, it's information. It means your personal hormone map has specific hotspots, specific follicles that happen to sit closest to their threshold, and those are the ones that will keep reporting in season after season. Once you know your own hotspots, an unfamiliar zone suddenly showing activity becomes far more meaningful than another appearance in a spot you already expected. Think back to that moment at the mirror, the gray chin hair, the ear that seemed to sprout fur out of nowhere, the eyebrows gone rogue while your part gets a little wider every year. None of that was your body malfunctioning. It was 2 outputs from one hormonal signal, read differently by follicles that were built with different instructions, depending on where they happen to sit on you. Scalp follicles were built to shrink under that signal. Chin, ear, nose, and brow follicles were built to expand under the exact same signal. Same chemical, opposite instructions, purely a matter of address. So the next time you spot something new in the mirror, you don't have to stand there wondering if you're aging badly or if something has gone wrong. You already know what it is. It's not random. It's your hormone map showing through, one follicle at a time. And your seasonal check-in is simply how you read that map calmly. Ears, nose, chin, brows, back, 90 seconds, no panic required. That gray chin hair from the beginning isn't a surprise anymore. Next season, it's just a checkpoint you already expected to see.